Here's a quick preview for part 2. Part 2 we're going to do the seals. I'm going to show you how to do that. But before we do that, I have lists. I take notes. These are all the things I get from Walt. Clean up all the parts. You got to be, you know, the parts got to be kind of shored up and cleaned up and before you put them together, and you can't just slap it together. It doesn't work like that. 1184 all surfaces. Yeah, so we're doing that. Yes, Walt, getting there. A better clutch drum. Now, I don't know what he's talking about. This one seems like it's fine. But whatever. You might want to get a better clutch drum. He doesn't like the stock handlebar that goes here. They're weak, apparently. These things are kind of on the weak side. So, of interest, HL Supply has an aftermarket one, and what I'll do is I'll try to put a link for it down in the description. That way you can buy a little more robust handlebar. Although it's aftermarket, it'll hopefully be a little more robust than this. Supposedly it's been too easy. OEM seals, pulse line, and intake pipe. So I'm actually going to do that. I have the OEM seals in here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a bit. Pulse line, and so impulse line goes from this brass nipple up through that center portion there, and I'll show that in a minute. And the intake pipe. So this is an OEM manifold, and this is an aftermarket manifold. What's the difference? This one is very inexpensive, probably less than $5. I mean, it's with the kit, but if you buy it separate, probably less than $5. This one's 40. 40 bucks this cost me. But if you have a problem with the rubber, the whole thing goes kaflooey on you, and again, the whole piston cylinder is going to eat itself. So supposedly you should really use the OEM rubber on these things. Whatever. Either way, the installation will be the same. We already, you'll see later, I did throw out the decompression plug. We're going to use a brand new NGK plug. The NGK BPM R7As. BPM R7A is the only plug that I use, and they do work well. For the most part, I mean, I've talked to a lot of different guys about the piston that comes with the cylinder head, whether you should keep it or get rid of it. Probably run it as is for the time being, unless you're going to swap out for even an OEM piston and cylinder. There's lots of talk. Walt has some great talks about what other cylinders you can buy for this unit other than the stock Chinese 54mm cylinder. There's the Cross, there's the Hyway, you can go OEM, there's big bore, aftermarket, all kinds of different stuff, so you can look into that and make your own judgments. Lots of comments on the chain adjuster and how it sucks, so you might want to go OEM on that part too. That was Walt's suggestions. Mastermind, might want to go OEM on the carburetor. I'm going to try the aftermarket carburetor, see if I can get it to idle. Sometimes they can't, and that tends to be the issue. The high RPM thing is not the issue, it's actually just getting it to idle. That becomes the tricky part. Again, the chain adjuster, big seller there. The wrist pin, so it's suggested that we actually change out the wrist pin from the aftermarket to an OEM wrist pin, which is actually considerably lighter. And also the fact that the circlips need to be adjusted. I'm going to show that in a bit. The circlips have pretty long ears on them, and you might want to grind them off. Charles Briscoe on YouTube also noted the positioning pin, which I'll go over in a minute. Antarctica, we already talked about what he mentioned, the untapped case bolts, and the check case crank lobe tolerances. So that's fairly centered within the case, and you can get it even more exact if you really try, but more or less I think is going to be pretty close. I think his issue was that once you put the whole thing together, the bearings might interfere with the crank lobes, but I think there's actually plenty of clearance, at least on this model. Huztl from Georgia came up with a whole list. Look at that, the whole thing. Pressure and vacuum test. Prior to teardown, rotate the engine by hand, ensure the piston skirts clear the crank. So before you actually put the whole thing down, you want to make sure that the piston skirts are actually clearing the crank lobes and the chassis itself. Clean and rinse the cylinder, rinse the crankcase, rinse it again. This is all clean, so I'm not worried about that. Check for a little burr. Like the performance of the crankcase around the impulse nipple, which I already did. Check that the crankshaft is centered. It is. Oil all bearings. They're oiled. I'm going to put more oil in here before I actually seat the cylinder head. Make sure the base gasket is installed correctly. Of course, it didn't say exactly how, but whatever, we'll get to that. Clip the ears and the piston circlips. Yes. Loctite and torque everything. Keep an eye out for strip bolts. I haven't found any strip bolts, so definitely Loctite or 1184, all this stuff. Pressure test the tank and the carburetor. I'm not too worried about that. If I have an issue, I'll just get an OEM carburetor, and if the tank leaks, well, I'll just tear it out and do it again. Although we can pressure test the tank if you really feel like it. Install heat reflective tape under and over the muffler. So there is a heat reflective tape that actually comes with the gasket kit that we have. So I've got to figure out how to install that, but we'll get there. If you're going to run the decompression valve, coat the thread with thread sealer. I'm not going to run that particular decompression valve. I'll probably run an OEM Husqvarna, which I happen to have laying around, or I might just plug it. Check run out on the clutch drum and grease bearing. And grease the bearing. Well, I WD-40'd the bearing. I don't really think you need to grease that bearing. The run out on the clutch drum. Well, hopefully it's not too far out. Grease the chain catcher and test for function. Grease the chain adjuster and test for function. So I did that. It kind of sucks, but it should work for now. Check the bar studs. If you only have 20 millimeters sticking out, they're installed backwards. Bar studs are installed correctly. Want to give everything a look over. Obvious defects, bearings that are under press, seals that are over pressed, seals rolled, cylinders trashed, leaky carbs, leaky base gaskets, no oil on any bearing. Cylinders have been plenty oiled though. Leaky decompression valves, buggered clutch drums, missing seals under the oil pump, and loads of backwards bar studs. So all kinds of things that can happen to this saw, and I think we've covered quite a bit of that so far. Let's get into the seals. I'm going to show you how to do that and how to start putting the rest of this together, and then we'll eventually get to this point. And once we're to this point, then we'll start part 3. Who's excited to continue with this, huh? How can't you be excited? It's awesome. So we got the crank in. Case is sealed up. Got to put some seals in. Now this kit right here comes with 2 different seals. One is obviously smaller than the other. So apparently there was a model that had a smaller seal. I'm going to guess that there probably was a model that might have even used a different thread configuration here. But since we're not going to worry about that right now, that little one can go in the parts bin. So let's keep this. So this is the one that comes from Farmertech and was installed in the case. And this is the new one. This is an OEM seal. Now, the nice thing about this part of the crank is this part is tapered, as opposed to on the other side there's a bit of a step. So on this side you don't have to worry as much about the seal inverting, because it's going to have a nice gradation there over the taper. Now if you want to get really picky, you can put a little bit of sealer on the outside here. So this is just Loctite 518. This is actually anaerobic sealer. So this only cures in the presence of 0 oxygen. So super light coat on the outside of this thing is all that you need. Then I'm just going to do a little bit of lube, not much, a little bit of lube. You don't want to get it on the sealing surface, or on the case rather, because you just put Loctite on there. Nice and gentle. So you seat it all the way by hand, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find a socket that's appropriately sized. That is a 16 millimeter deep socket. So now we're going to nice and easy tap this in. Got to make sure that it's going, and it is. Just a hair more. That's it. Beauty. This will roll. Perfect. Now let's do the other side. Just gonna gently clean the inner side of the outer race here, because that's where the seal seals against the bearing. Now this is a bit more of an issue, this side of the crank, because there's a lip. If you just press down on that, you may actually invert that. So I'd rather not do that, but I have a trick. So I've showed this trick before, just a piece of aluminum curled up, and we're going to curl it in like this. And all this does is it makes the transition smoother over that lip. Just like that. And you twirl it this way so it doesn't get caught on the edge of the aluminum, of course. Just to be completely insane with the Loctite here. Odds are we're going to get a fine seal and we won't have to worry about it, but still. I'm going to say, well, is this material bad to be in the bearings? And they actually, no. 1184 probably is no good in the bearings, but this won't cure in the presence of oxygen, so it just basically washes away. At least that's the whole theory behind an anaerobic sealer. Anyway, so you take this now, and you slowly rotate it. Slowly. And you rotate it. And so now this piece of metal has helped the seal transition over the lip on the crank. And Walt was pointing out some of the cranks have kind of a rough lip. It won't even matter if you have this. Now we need a good sized socket here. There we go. And this won't allow us to overseat the seal here, I don't think. Get it started. Pretty much flush with the bearing. That looks good to me. Now this piece of aluminum, and again I have this in another video, so you're welcome to check that out. This piece of aluminum just slowly comes out of here. And now you have no worries that the spring inside the seal there has come out because of a lip grabbing and something inverting. There's no chance of inversion there. And so that's a nice clean install. Flush all the way around. Let's make sure it still goes nicely. Feels tight. That's nice. Now there's all sorts of things we can tackle. What do you want to do next? If this was a Husky, I'd actually start thinking about putting the gas tank on. So let's aim for that. Let's aim for putting on the gas tank. All kinds of rubber pieces here. Ooh. Golly, it smells like the John Deere dealership. I believe these pieces go as rubber mounts. That looks like a rubber mount off of a ms660, actually. It isn't, but that's what it looks like. 2 mediums, 1 small, 1 big rubber donut thingy. Bunch of rubber O-ring rings. Some of this stuff I really don't know where it goes. So let's work on getting the handle on, but before we do that I think we'll put on the AV mounts. And it looks like they just slide in, but it doesn't look like they're going to be easy. So, what do you grease the ways with? Grease, of course. I know, Walt uses Pantene for this, so. Pop, that was easy. Let's do the big one. Also easy. I'm assuming this medium-sized one goes here. Yep. Right on in. And it has its own retention ring, so it's not like it's going to move, even if it is greased. So this one goes over here by the oil tank here. At least it looks like it goes there. Sure do look like it goes here. Also looks like if it gets snagged even a little bit, she ain't going. Let's try the old push it from the center with something blunt. Pop. So it does indeed go. I used a big Allen to push it. Still haven't figured out where these 3 rings go. We have an AV mount here, which goes like that. And there's 2 screws, looks like M5, and they can't be much longer than a centimeter. I'm going to take a guess that this is it. So it's 2 screws, T27 M5. Screws look like that. One, 2. So that AV mount is on, the other AV mounts are on. I wonder if the tank just goes in here easy. It looks like there's a spot for the wires. It looks like there's a spot for the AV here, just to kind of sit there. M5 for the AV up there. There. So that's just got to go slide in like that. Makes sense. Everything looks like it lines up alright. Let's look for the AV bolts. So before I go for the AV mounts here with this on the saw, I want to make sure it actually fits. I mean, is this supposed to go in here? Well, it sure looks like it goes. So it looks like these screws are the ones for the AV mounts. They go into the plastic. And it also looks like kind of the key AV mount to get this around is right here. And you gotta push this AV mount out just a little bit, and then this just slides right in. So let's do the one I just did first. That's one. And yes, I know these don't need lube going into plastic, but I'm still going to grease them anyway, because I'm just like that. 2. This is not an impact, it's a torque sensitive, so don't nobody worry, I'm not impacting these in. 3, 4, and there is one left. It's the one up here, and it's an actual bolt. It's a single M5. Looks like a 15 millimeter, 16 millimeter, something like that. M5 T27. Good. So now we have the handle on. Starts to look like a saw. Looks fun. I think I found out what these rings are for. I think they're for the oil and gas caps. Boy, that's kind of confusing. And I may pick up OEM caps for these, but maybe not. Walt said you may have to give this one a little extra in order to get it to seal. This one here does have the traditional ball on the end type. Slide it in, give it a tug up, and now it should stay. And I just put those on there so that nothing falls in there. Charles Briscoe on YouTube, I'll credit him with mentioning that he had an issue with one of the positioning pins, the case positioning pins, fall out. The positioning pin was over here. Well, guess what? Not on this model. This model does not have that positioning pin, at least it doesn't have it coming through. We don't have to worry about that actually coming through. What do we want to assemble next? Usually with the Huskies, I'll do like this stuff and then this stuff or whatever, and you kind of get a feel for just kind of working on one saw, one side of the saw or another. It looks like this is going to go together pretty quickly once I know what bolt goes where. So I've decided to put the oiler down next. So what I'm going to do now is take this little grommet piece, like a thick O-ring, put it here, and it looks like the oiler just goes right down. Now it's entirely possible I'm missing some type of a washer, but hopefully not. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on these little bolts. They go here. If I had my way, I might actually tap these bigger. You need an M5 and a flat bottom tap, and you might have it, but maybe you don't need it. Little blue Loctite, these little tiny bolts. Now these are not the stock bolts. I don't know where the stock ones are. Good. 1, 2. Just because I like to grease everything. Make sure the worm moves. I really don't know exactly how all this is going to go, so please bear with me. I believe this piece goes here, and this is part of a baggie of a number of things here. I still have yet to figure out what that is. In this other baggie, there's this little spring. It looks like that little spring attaches there. And there's an E-clip that goes right here. Let's put the spring on first. See how that fares. Yeah, and now it just, you can see it moves just like that. And you really don't need to do anything drastic here. So let's put the E-clip on. Again, a little bit of grease. You gotta be careful with these, but just grab it. And an E-clip should basically rotate freely. Yeah. Now, some of the other models did not come with a retaining pin over here. This one happens to, which is great. It's not centered. You can see there's more out there and less here. So it's epoxied, so I'll just grind a little bit off. And this looks awful sharp, so be careful with that. So I just tap this in after I ground it down a little bit, and it seems to go. I'm going to assume the rubber goes over the spring so it doesn't get hooked or caught. Also going to assume it kind of grabs there. Yep, so this, forget the spring for the moment. This piece comes out. Likely, this would be best to go in there like that. Then you hold back this other spring, get that in there. So now the little spring in there works. Now you have to get this cam on here. Good. Maybe it's better to have this out. Ah, they have it so you can hook it that way. And then drag it back. Oh, that's cool. Again, tap it on in. And now the trick, getting that spring to either grab on one end or the other. You have to stretch the spring and bring it over there. You have to bring that as far as possible. Now you have to get one over the other. Before I stretch the spring, I want to put the other E-clip on. I believe the two are interchangeable. I don't think they are different. Get it in line and squeeze. Click. And you're good there. Can you do it with brute force? Probably not. It's kind of difficult, actually. I'd have more luck hooking it there and brute forcing it that way. So in case you guys remember that scrunch that I cannibalized, so I made a shoehorn, something that'll actually grab a little bit here. Yeah, once it goes vertical, there's a little bit of friction there, and a little bit of grease on this. And you gotta experiment with this a little bit. So I've got it there. There. Clicked and in. Got it. Let's see. Yep. That's released. So now we can get the clutch on. So here's the clutch. I do like to put a little bit of something in there, because I hate taking these dang things off. Now this is left-hand thread, of course. You do not have to put them on tight. It will tend to work on. And then this little notch here has to go where the oiler is. That goes there. So I'm missing one other part. The needle bearing goes right there. That fits. It's not the big one. It's the little one in here in the packet. Then this goes on. Again, catch the oiler. Why is that so tight? It looks like it's the band, not the top layer, but the lower layer here is sticking this way too much. And I gotta bend it that way, right over here, and then we'd probably be alright. That also means I have to remove it. Again. Alright, I've engaged the oiler. Let's let that break in a little bit. Now I need to find the E-clip and the washer. I'm assuming this goes on here somewhere. And I'm assuming that goes at the top. So then the question is, where the devil does this go? Does that go... I think you put on the washer this way. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here. Then the clutch with the hex out so you can remove it. Put that down. Needle bearing. A little bit of oil. Clutch drum. You have to find the oiler though. Actually, the easiest place to look at whether it's engaged with the notch or not is over here. Gotta make sure it's engaged with the oiler, which it is. Put your sprocket on there, spline, a retention washer, and then we need the E-clip. By the way, we've got this baggie here, which have a few parts. I'm taking this baggie and the spark plug I do not trust, so we're just throwing that out. And unfortunately, these decompression valves are no good. This doesn't look bad, it feels pretty good, but these decompression valves have been known to have trouble, so I'm tossing that. This happens to be what looks like an extra oil pickup. So it looks like there's a baggie with these the rings here, but the E-clip is in here. So is the Woodruff key. You really don't want to lose that. The E-clip goes on here. These have a way of flying. Watch your eyes. That's not going to go anywhere. Man, this side is almost ready for fun. I wonder if we can do the oil cover now. Let's see if we can do that. So 4 screws do not look like they need to be long. Those are not M5 screws, those are M4. And there are 4 of them. And I do not seem to have those screws in the kit. So I guess I use my regular M4. Here's some M4s. Let's try these. So yet again, unfortunately, it looks like I need to supplement pieces here. The cover's down, blue Loctite. Wish I could help you guys out more here, but I don't have the bolts, so looks like 4 M4, and I would guess that if they did come in your packet, they should theoretically be identical. I don't see why they wouldn't be. One, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. While we're over here, let's get the bar adjuster. Now, there have been some significant issues with the bar adjuster. Supposedly they have been remedied, but I do not know. Yeah, it doesn't look like this is going to be an issue. This looks like it's tight. Some of them needed a shim of some kind. This does not look like it'll need a shim. This does look like it will need to be gently hammered down. This looks too big to properly fit. Oh, no, it goes. There we go. So that black piece goes there. Oh, wrong way. The black piece goes this way. There. Okay, it clicks. So I just polished the end of this adjuster just a little bit. A bit of grease on there. And then this black piece goes on like this, because it's got to fit in the groove here. Forgot one thing. Forgot the actual adjuster. Okay. Click that black plastic piece in again. Pretty sure that's going to go in there like that. Pretty sure the O-ring goes in here. Then that there like that. And like I said, there was a cap. This was the cap. Let's put this one screw down and see. Okay. Like that. And then you put the bar plate on, and then things will be hunky-dory. The one M4 screw I do have, I'll bet is for the bar plate. Bar plate screw. Smaller in diameter. Okay. Let's see how terrible the adjuster is now. The answer is pretty darn terrible. I think the O-ring goes down first. I think we're just going to come to the conclusion that the oiler here is terrible. It just is not going to be smooth no matter what we do. Small flat blade screwdriver gets this screwed down. This white piece goes here. Still not exactly sure what that does. There. Now we can put this black piece on. Yeah, there we go. That's a positive seat. Now we can put the bar on here. And I think we're dealing with a Husky screw here because I don't have one that fits here. A little bit of Loctite. Now let's see if this works. Packed with grease, still kind of sucks. So the bar adjuster's in. So the O-ring goes down first, underneath the adjuster. I think that's how it goes. But the whole thing here is rough. Even with the grease in there, it just doesn't want to go smooth. So we'll come back and do the dogs later. If you like chainsaws and you like this video, please join us at Outdoor Power Equipment Forum, which is opeforum.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe.